How are you? Kia ora, kia ora. Welcome to the first ever Benevolent Banter. Ba, ba, ba. The place where we have lots of cool bants with cool people. We were told this morning that we are the most literally leaned back, laid out folks ever. So my name is Cassie Roma, if we haven't met before, and Benevolent Banter is profanity filter warning. We might say fuck. Yeah, there could be some profane things, but introducing him, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Oh, why, thank you, Cassie. And what an honor to be your first guest. Like, genuinely pretty stoked with that. Yes, my name is Qassem Naim, a.k.a. Q. I am a bit of a data person, I suppose, is the general branding. I've been consciously trying to avoid the corporate lean
data
on
person?
the identity. Yeah.
Is this an undercover nerd?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
But I fortunately rode the wave when nerds started becoming cool. You know, they were like, sexiest job of 2009 was like data scientist. And I was like, yep.
Wow,
yeah,
really?
I don't know if 2009, but it did hit Time's top list at some point.
Shout out to 2009.
Shout out to 2009. More than 10 years ago now, right? I know one of the sad things that hit people, we're as far away from 1990 as we are from 2050. And I was just like, oh, man. But nonetheless, I digress. I'm Q. I like data. I also enjoy a bit of travel. I've lived in a few places around the world, and am genuinely looking at driving a lot of ways where I can help other people and help clients and help companies and help my team and anyone else grow effectively and like realize unrealized potential in their own way. And so that's manifested in a number of ways. Currently, I work in the advertising creative industry, supporting FCB New Zealand in the data and technology space.
That's awesome. What Q also didn't tell you is that if you didn't notice, we both have these American accents going on. I've been in New Zealand for 17 years now. You and I met, like 6 months ago, and it feels like I've known you all those 17 years, which is hilarious. Not your gay mom, but other people's.
Yes,
we'll come to that later.
Circle back.
Yeah, circle back to that. Circle back. We'll pivot.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about you. Like, where are you from? Tell me a bit about your childhood and what brought you to be sitting in this seat today.
Lovely. So kicked off in the very weird and awesome Portland, Oregon. That's where I was brought into this world. Born to an American mother from Michigan. For those of you on the video, like here in Michigan, it's a little town called Owasso. And the coolest thing about Michigan is that the map's a hand. So anybody you know from Michigan will reference where they are on the mitten, effectively. But nonetheless, mom from Michigan. My dad was actually Palestinian, studying in the States at the time. And then after living and growing up in Portland, I think just out of middle school, popped over to Qatar and lived in the Middle East for quite a little while.
Intermediate school age for our Kiwi listeners.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Year 9, I think, is when that finishes up, and you go into high school or post-secondary or whatever you call it thereafter. And so I round out my academic career in Qatar, which was a pretty buzzy place to live.
Yeah.
Lots of travel.
Different to Portland.
Big difference to Portland. Culturally, like immersing with the melting pot of their own. Like it's really interesting. It's just very distinct from the American melting pot.
Yeah.
But still able to like, I don't know, one of the most fascinating things about travel for me is being able to engage with like other cultures, other societies, see how like people live and where the similarities and nuance lies, right?
Which is why you'd love data, right?
Which is why I love data, totally. Just basically breaking down society and people into ones and zeros and figuring out how it goes from there.
And then realizing we are all in this together.
And where kindness and generosity are so important, and then went back to the States, Washington State, go Cougs, went to WSU, and jumped into microbiology, medical technology.
Okay, so a real dum-dum from way back.
Real dum-dum from way back. I was foolishly aspiring to go medical at the time, as many people do, which is one of those funny career paths where especially anybody with immigrant parents knows that there's like really three options, and you can be like a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. So I was going the doctor route. And you look around, and I remember on day one of some of the, through to actually go medical, and at that stage as well, and it wasn't because you wash out. Like some people, of course, wash out of medical, but it was just like you kind of open your eyes to the nuance within the field, and you're always like, I didn't need to go MD. So I was doing medical tech, microbiology, cancer research, so like cancer targeting research and things. And I get to say the little line of how I, went from targeting cancer in a lab to targeting consumers in the real world. But
whoa, man, whoa.
yeah, exactly. But did a bit of that. Got involved with business development within the university, realized that was a lot of what I wanted to do. So we were like commercializing the research effectively and the opportunities to get them out to market. So there were a lot of brilliant PhDs and people working on developing and discovering and identifying new things. And then once they'd done that, the universities actually had a mechanism by which they developed those to get them out to market.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And so like IP and licensing and corporate agreements and all that kind of fun jazz. At which point through that process, I realized I didn't want to do med as much. And so I ended up pursuing my post-grad in business and data analytics.
Wow.
And rounded that out.
I went to UC Santa Barbara, went to the beach most days, fell into history and Spanish, and then wanted to go play the tambourine in Elton John's touring band.
Yeah, well.
So...
to each their own, I suppose. Like slightly
different ambitions.
Still very similar, I guess, in a lot of other ways.
But here we are. Literally, the reason we met was through work.
Yeah.
It was through our colleagues and what we do around data and creativity and connecting with people. Now, what I really loved is that you said you were studying cancer. And you took that data and extrapolated it to go, okay, I want to talk about consumers. What part of that drives you? Because there's a piece of the puzzle, and I know most people who know me would maybe say like full of positivity, but also a real cynical bitch sometimes when it comes to what businesses are putting out into the world and the actualizing betterment for people. Tell me about that, because it feels to me like you've put betterment of humans behind both of those. So in your role today here in New Zealand, what gets you up? What gets you going in the morning from that perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I suppose there's like the twofold to it, right? So I talked about like at a high level, it's all about unlocking this potential that just like exists around us, right? And doing whatever role I can personally to be additive to that rather than detractive.
Nice.
But for microbiology to go into the consumers and data and everything, it's always been about this like fundamental understanding. Like I really need to understand how things work, particularly if you expect me to talk about them, evangelize, do whatever else. And so life is this like great mystery. Not to get too meta, we'll come back real quick, I promise.
To that,
yeah. But life's this great mystery that we don't even really fundamentally understand scientifically. We can observe many things about how life manifests, but to like actually understand what drives it. And so microbiology, which is a study of small life, right? Biology is study of life, micro, small. So we're studying small life, looking at like bacteria, viruses, different like things, which are, as far as we can tell, like the single smallest units of life that you're able to study. And then when you look at things on that level, it's easier to start to like deconstruct and identify what pieces do what and how it kind of works, right, to the best that we can tell. And I think people are very similar in that way, right? Like people are
so
all,
cool.
I guess, an expression of life, but in their own way, the other great mystery. You know what I mean? There's just
what made that person click? Why did that person do that thing?
Yeah, and an individual. And then why, when you put people in groups, do they behave weird and differently as well? You know, and like why and how. And so all of that, it's, I guess, driven from an inherent curiosity or a pursuit of how things work so that we can then influence, outcomes based off of that.
See that you got it right there for me. So the thing that makes, I think, the most passion amongst us tick is that curiosity around humanity. What in your childhood, were you born with an inherent curiosity? Did your parents help generate this with you? Did they, was there a different way of looking at the world? Was there a different lens? Because I'd say, in America where we grew up, most of our cohort of humans probably go within 100 miles of where we grew up. And that's their sphere of influence, which is why, and we can get to this later too, potentially, which is why Facebook and social media have been both so uplifting and so detrimental to society. So what is the thing that has always driven you to be curious?
Great question. Really getting in there. My folks were great. I love my folks. They were supportive and awesome. Unique perspective in different things, different levels of adversity that you grew up with, in the context of immigrant parents or whatever else, and economic status, and you name it. So there are all those things that go. But there's that saying, at least I'm poorly translating or transliterating, but the carpenter's door squeaks, and it's that concept of where when you devote something to your profession or your career, you don't always look after your own things. You're so busy fixing everyone else's house and sorting everyone else's squeaky doors, you don't always deal with yours. And maybe to that extent, I could say the same as a way to scapegoat and sidestep this question. Where I've spent so much of my time trying to understand what makes other people tick and how things operate. And while I've been very introspective, particularly as I've gotten older and matured in terms of being able to better understand and guide my own actions and behaviors, I can't put my finger on a thing and be like, that's what drove my curiosity. Can you? Do you have?
No, but I think about the reason I asked that question too is because I think about the dichotomy between myself and my younger brother. So my younger brother is in Michigan with his family. He is an orthopedic surgeon. He is just literally kicking ass. He's on the hand, he's near kind of where you were.
Down here somewhere.
Yeah, but about there, slightly higher than the Canadian border there.
Nice.
Yeah. he's a Michigan. But Rob was a basketball player when he was younger. My dad played for the Dodgers. We were a sporty family. Lesbian. It's not surprising that I grew up to be one. But Rob, when he was a junior in high school, he broke his arm. And he was being recruited by D1 schools. He was going to play sports. He broke his arm, and it just kind of stymied that dream. It stifled it. But his orthopedic surgeon helped him mentally and physically to get back to who he was. And I could see the shift in his life from the moment that orthopedic surgeon came into his life. And he had a drive then. He had a curiosity. He had a focus. Whereas me, I think maybe we're more similar in this direction. Even from a little girl, I've been like, wow, I'm really fascinated in that. I'm going to go find out about it. Wow, I'm fascinated about that. I want to learn about it. So for me as a professional person, I've quite often felt quite boxed in. And I've also felt, and let's talk about this now, more sidestepping. Being an American in New Zealand, and you're much fresher than I am, I feel like sometimes with the curiosity, it's something that's held up as something most people should be at work, but then there's also a weaponization of not staying in our box. Have you found that?
Yeah, definitely. And to be fair to our Kiwi friends, it happened to me in the States as well. I remember
first. Not good.
Yeah,
Did it great, fantastic.
Congratulations. Yeah, but even the first agency I worked at, I remember coming in straight out of grad school, energized, excited, doing whatever, trying to push, curious, trying to understand how this whole system worked. And with the dynamics of business, was stepping in and out of my box or my lane, as it was referred to at different times, which makes people feel uncomfortable, right? And you can tell, particularly there's always a risk of stepping on toes and things. But I was on one of my probably first business trips to Pittsburgh, and it was with all these execs, and I was like, ooh, I'm on this business trip. But the CCO was chatting to me in the evening, and one of the things he said that stuck with me was, he's like, you don't know how to stay in your lane, but you add value when you do, and that's rare. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the challenges. It's like, of course, you have to be considerate of the organization you're in and not create a toxic team environment. So you need to be able to be supportive and help people around. But then, here in New Zealand, it's the same. I've never known how to stay in my lane, but I guess I've gotten better at setting expectations from day one. in terms of
same. So I feel like if you're open about the fact that you are a curious human, I quite often will go into meetings a lot of the time now and say to people, I'm gonna probably ask a ton of questions, and it's not because I think you don't know the answer, it's because I know you do. You're smarter than me, you're the expert. I want to learn so that I can understand the wider narrative to what's going on and not just be able to apply it to a certain discipline or project.
But the fact that you have to preface that, I mean, that's the other side of what you were talking about before in terms of like how weaponization of not knowing is something I've heard you talk about that happens here as well. And the fact that questions are almost assumed to be like a shot or like a test, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, no, I'm not asking you to see if you know. Like, of course I'm not asking why, you know? Like,
I found that to be, and I imagine this is all just across the globe. I imagine it's just humanity. But I think specifically in my, and maybe it's the type of business we're in. Maybe it's because it's data and it's new and it's the forefront. Like somebody said once, Cassie Roma should cut her teeth on the cutting edge. And I was like, nah, man. Like, wow. No, I just had a university login. So I got on Facebook early because, again, my brother, who's a doctor, told me to get on it. And I was like, bro, it's never going to beat MySpace. He's the doctor. He won that one. So like it feels like maybe because of we're working in a place where it is almost uncharted territory, but you can apply the rules of humanity through time. That maybe folks in more traditional roles, that does make them a little nervous. And I can see that and I respect that.
And that's the other side of it, right? What you were saying, it's not just the data and tech. It's we're in an old industry playing in a new space and trying to marry the two in interesting ways. And that's where, like, what was his Nick Law, I believe, the guy who looks after Publicis Global, CCO, he was speaking at Adweek a couple years back, and he talked about this as well in a very interesting way. And especially because it was coming from a creative, a well-respected creative, you know, like who like people know and respect, because data people or, you know, people who are drinking the Kool-Aid, if you will, can like
I mean, if you mix that Kool-Aid, drink it, man.
Totally. But it carries less weight, clearly, because there's a perceived bias or whatever else. And then when somebody from inside of functions that are more traditional or more established is there addressing, you know, like, of course, people do things they're comfortable with and experienced with, you know, and so like if you're comfortable with certain channels or certain processes or certain approaches, like that's what you will do by instinct and by nature. And then how do you harness and create those delta moments? And, you know, just to cause that reappraisal in a non-threatening way, you know what I mean? It's not like, you know, figure this stuff out or your job's on the line in 6 months.
It's not actually come in and break it. I love what you just said. How do you, what's the reappraisal in a way that makes people feel like safe? I feel like that's a really important way to move forward.
And when you can do that, it's amazing how much they can amplify the results. You know what I mean? Of the thing. So you can come to the table with because the downside to being new and innovative and cutting edge is immature, right? And there's less of the practice and experience and history behind it. And so when you're able to surface things around that and then apply this layer of experience, you know, from like where things have been, you get disproportionate results than you would have with either individually.
That disproportionate results, that's what the data guy calls magic.
That's yes, 100%.
That's actually, like, how geeky is that? Like, I love that side of the creative and advertising industry and what we're doing. The opportunity to tell stories and the impact that utilizing the data to tell the stories to the right people at the right time is almost infinite in this world.
But it's still real hard, you know, like people, well, first of all, call me
the dad in me is
1-800-23, no.
But still real hard.
It's still real hard. Just because it's like, there's so much apparent conflict that comes through. And the data that's being extracted and the people extracting it often leave it in an unprocessed state. You know what I mean? It's almost like you've literally mined ore, and you haven't processed it to turn it into anything usable or applicable yet. And then combining that with the human truths, you know, that drive the rest of the industry. And you are the content queen, if you will.
Talking my language.
So how do you go about doing that? Like, you can be bogged down and weighed down by analysis paralysis or whatever people want to call it. You know, like the just sheer volume of data and being able to make it meaningful is such a gap. How are you able to support, drive, collaborate with analytical functions you've worked with in order to be able to elevate that and bring it through to actually delivering something?
I think it's, again, because I am the old lady of probably social media now, and especially in this market, is there wasn't anybody else to do the analytics. We didn't have the social bakers or even the back end of Facebook or Instagram or anything going on in the beginning. It was literally a spreadsheet where I can remember a friend of mine, Martin Whitley, when I was working at ANZ, he sat with me for an hour while I cried so he could teach me how to make a pivot chart because my boss at the time, shout out James, dickhead. I love you. He's great. No, he's great. He wanted me to have a certain type of chart from data that was just dirty. Like it was dirty data. I couldn't even bring an insight out of that. And Marty sat with me for hours. Yeah. And he helped me create like a way to visualize. But because I think it was working through that abject frustration of being the first and sitting with somebody, like you said earlier, who knew the way to do something in a traditional way. Because Marty took the time to help me with that, I was able to go data, washed data. Yeah. Holy cow, here's an insight. Yeah. And I'm not going to say that insight helped us sell many mortgages, but I'm going to say it did help bring up the brand resilience and resonance at that time, which for me was illuminating because it was like, okay, if we're telling stories and we're doing the right thing at the right time, it works. Long story short, fundamentally, I love just digging into the data. I love understanding something and having an aha moment where you go, so all of these numbers mean that people actually fundamentally care, not about clicking on that banner, but the message that says we want to help you take care of your family. Now, how do we as a business answer that? How do we make that a promise and deliver to that?
Yeah, follow through.
Correct. So I don't know, man. It's a fun little journey, isn't it?
It is. And it's cool that you stick in, I mean, by virtue of having to, perhaps, but at the same time, now there's this perception that everything's hard. Like anything that you don't do or is new is hard, and it's not hard. Like if anything, it's getting so much easier. Democratization is one of the big things that are like
with an S or a Z.
Definitely a Z, but nonetheless, creativity is being democratized in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Media channels are being democratized. Data and analytics is being democratized. Like it was hard when you had to like crank out code or manually clean all these roads of data or do whatever else. But now you've got WYSIWYG or what you see is what you get editors where you drag and drop stuff. And you don't need to be like a Photoshop pro to make something look cool. And like the voice that social's given everybody. And so all of these things are like, it's actually not that hard. And so I get bummed out and like I try and I'm been working on finding the best ways to bring people into things and help them understand that it doesn't have to be that hard.
That's something that I talk to a lot, especially when I'm out speaking at events. Is we overcomplicate the not complex, meaning what we're doing right now. This conversation is the easiest thing we can do. If we can do that as a business and treat each human, each eyeball, each click as a heartbeat, as a person with dreams, and also realize that no matter how much data we have, we are not rational beings. But you tug at our emotions, man, you've got us. Simplification, like dial it right back. Right back.
Singing my song, I love it. And
we should write a song.
Yeah, we should. We were doing some Marvin Gaye.
Not gonna.
Anywho,
no.
Yep.
And we just lost our one follower.
Was there one person?
Sorry.
But the emotional rational thing, one of the biggest things I've struggled with, like getting my head around. Yeah. Perhaps because I was always good at maths, and like whatever. Like writing, perhaps was a hobby that I enjoyed, but not like the thing because math was so like binary, right? It's like yes, that's correct. All of them were correct. Good job. And I'm like, yes, and there was this whole.
The second you started putting like an X in there, that's not a number. You gotta guess that shit.
Letters.
Go away.
I know.
What's the I?
The I's. Oh, and then you throw in Greek letters. Anyway, so that's been one where I've expected even in corporate environments and academic environments and everything else, that people would suddenly become rational. That it was like, once you get to like the business world, like people can't be emotional anymore. Like it's going to be, you have to make like smart business decisions that are rational and well justified. You know, like it's just like I was constantly being like, no, people are still just real emotional.
Of course we are.
And I'm being real emotional in my pursuit of things. You know what I mean? And it's a weird, as much as you like to post-rationalize.
That we are great at that as human beings. The post-rationalization of all the shit we do. Is fantastic. Yeah. Some people do it quicker than others. Yeah. I need to go away and think about it. I'm like, that's why I did that. What a brilliant person. No.
Post-rationalizing on the fly is effectively bullshitting well, right?
That's it.
I think that's
Yeah, but your bullshit meter's pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a practiced skill. You know?
Did that person just look me in the eyes and say that?
Well, no, and this was the other thing we were talking about. Like, authenticity is so huge, and I've only seen or recognized it more and more as I've grown in my career and developed and met more people. And what I think makes really effective speakers and really influential people and leaders, and like yourself included, right? This concept of being genuine and authentic. I look you in the eye, you talk to me. You're not reading a script. You're not trying to sell me something. Your motives are clear and on the table, and it's fundamentally like I can trust you as a human, and trust is really the core.
I find it interesting. I'd say at least the last decade, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of, since the democratization of sharing, a lot of talk around what you just said. Authenticity is a concept. Like, when did that become a concept at work? Like, you know what I mean?
Kindness.
Yeah, kindness. And kindness not being seen as weak. Yeah. I have had, I shit you not, in my career, two women bosses who have pulled me aside and told me, one of them actually said to me, I was looking through your emails. To first I was like, bitch, what? But anyways, she said, I was looking through your emails and I think you really need to stop being so nice to everybody. And I was like, what do you mean so nice? And she's like, well, you always ask people how their day was. And you always say things like, how was your son? Did he have a good weekend at the soccer? How did you know they have a son and they're at the soccer? And I remember looking at her and going, are you joking right now? Like, are you actually? And she said, no, I think because people are going to think because you're nice that they can walk all over you. Let's just say I didn't stay there much longer. Because this idea of kindness as weakness, and everybody's throwing the word kindness around now too. It was like content 5 years ago. Content's the new black. Kindness is the new black. I think it's a way of life. It's a way of comporting yourself. And for me, the biggest thing, especially in business, has always been not to walk out with a title. It's my parents, thank God for them, never instilled upon me, you are worthy because of your output. You are a soul to be purified. You are not a being that is meant to output. So thank God for them. But I find the older I get, the more this truth, the looking people in the eyes matters so much at work, and it is so easy to break apart title from who I am as a human. I don't want to go to my funeral and go, I'm so glad I worked that 3 a.m. to 9 p.m. every night, and I'm so glad I missed that family holiday. I'm so glad I missed that thing to put in the extra hours and push that social post live. The opposite is true. I was talking to my wife the other day because I'm really looking forward to not having a 9-to-5 job. So resigned from my job. You know this. I'm very excited about the future. There is opportunity is just around every corner. It's butterflies and rainbows. I'm sure I will pack my pants very soon. But we were talking, and I have an almost 14-year-old daughter, and I've never dropped her off at school time. It's always been at before school care at 7:30, and I've gone off to a job. Poor kid, she's starting her freshman year in high school. I'm going to be sitting on the bus with her. I literally was like, do you want me to drop you off? Can I take the first day off so I can be there with you? She's like, Mom, no. I'll sit in the back of the bus and then I'll walk. And she's like, nope. I love you, but no. So I feel like the kindness conundrum shouldn't be a conundrum. It shouldn't be something we're throwing around. It should actually be fundamental to who we are as people and who we are at work. Yeah. But it's scary, right?
It's super scary. But I think it's easy to focus on the non-work, non-kind of corporate benefits of kindness. And, the intrinsic worth and value and your ability to lift up people around you and bring up the energy and do that. But it's super helpful in corporate settings as well. It's always been one of those things where people, you can tell, and it's actually quite striking when you see it sometimes, people who know everybody's name, even just that, From the person at the front desk to, you know, the IT guys to the service to whatever, everybody everywhere is like equally important and needs to be treated as a human and like regarded as such. And if you're kind to them, you form a relationship and rapport. And if you form a relationship and rapport, they're more likely to go out of their way to help you when they can.
Oh, it's actually that simple.
Yeah.
Half of the time, well, not even half the time, all of the time, it's connectedness that will bind. It will either bind us all together or it will break us apart. And in the context of business, there are so many scientific studies. You would probably have read all the data around engagement. And that's just a lovely little keyword, like a nice little shiny word to hang up. That's just basically people trusting each other. And without the context, without the sharing, we lose that. And I've always been fascinated by people who can be one person at work and then another person at home. Like I went through a week-long training as a part of a job, and we went away with a woman that I was working with, another American woman. And at work, man, she was a ball buster. She was like, her team loved her, but everybody else was like, stay away from that one. She will take you out at the knees. And I can remember her standing up in front of a crowd. There was only maybe like 10 of us. It was a pretty small little group. And she said, I'm completely different on the weekends to who I am at work. And I can see now why people don't trust me. And to see her have that realization, she wept a little bit. I wept a little bit. Our relationship after that was just freaking magical. Because I just stood up and said, I don't trust people who are one person at work and not the other. Because how can you be an ass kicker at work and then save animals on the weekend? It just doesn't allow for trust. So a lot of people are more comfortable to be work person at work and who they are at home. And I think there are definitely spaces and guardrails we should play in. I'm not going to burp in a meeting. I'll burp in front of you.
In a podcast.
But on the podcast, but not in front of you. So there, obviously, we don't act as like silly as we do.
There's professionalism and respect for like, you know, what you're there for and what you're doing. I think the difference between people's work and home life was so much stronger in the corporate environments in Seattle before I came to New Zealand. I think, and maybe it's because it's a creative agency specifically and whatever else, but in the creative agency, there has been this ability, I think, for people to be more authentically who they are and like bringing themselves through, which is one of the things that I've enjoyed about like my working environment here. I think I went through the thing in university really because I remember transplanting from Qatar, and you kind of have that life, right? And that whole world and who you are in that world. And then I had some friends that I formed from like the classes and things that I was doing, and some friends I formed from outside of that, and my friends from where I was from and my family and all these things, and never would the 5 groups meet, you know? Like I was very much orchestrating and arbitrating. And then once I transferred and I moved just a few hours away, but was coming back only every couple weeks or once a month or something, and wanted to see all the people, it was this like intense juggling act I created for myself where I had to like try and slot the people, but like not let them know what I was doing and like make sure that I was able to maintain this distinct identity versus that one. And it just like one time on the visit back, it was like, you know what, fuck it. If you guys want to come hang out,
Everybody
hang out.
in one spot.
Everybody come hang out. I'm here. I want to see all of you. You know, maybe you'll get along. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll get on because I'm here and at least the bridge between you guys. And we have relationships. And so hopefully that can extend. But it was like so liberating in a lot of ways. And it was like one of the major steps in terms of just getting to being the most authentic version of myself that I could be.
Isn't that cool?
And
then realizing like that all of these different people from different parts of your life like are friends now.
Or at least still love you, right?
Yeah.
Even if they don't get on.
Even if like that guy was a real dick, but I still love you.
And I still want to see you and hang out, and we can, you know, figure out ways to make this work. And so I think, being able to see that and that vulnerability that, you know, must have happened, like, as you said, she wept on stage and like she had this kind of moment.
Oh, man.
Creates some of the strongest relationships as well.
And it's funny how little moments in life become the big ones that you remember. And for me, that was one of the most fantastic transformations I've ever seen a human have. She changed her entire life. Like after that, you could see it was a pivot point for her. Her personal life changed, her professional life changed. There was turmoil, there were ups and downs, but she survived it all, and she is so happy now. And this is years ago. And for me, like, I feel like the proud mama. Like, it's like, wow, girl, you grew. And I just want to like lift her and hug her and be like, you queen, you amazing human, well done.
And I'm odd. It's like such a satisfying feeling. It's like probably one of the best feelings in the world, especially if you feel like you've been able to contribute and play a part in someone else's like rising of that. And so, I mean, maybe the compassion and kindness and everything is really just veiled selfishness, right? But like, because this is one
a little bit, maybe.
Maybe because I've had big philosophical debates about this concept, right? Like, is there such a thing as a selfless act? And you'd be like Mother Teresa. Well, it's like, oh yeah, but did she feel real good about helping all those people? So like, and are we even capable? There's a science bar. Are we capable due to like the chemical reactions that are occurring that drive our decision making?
Right. So when the cortisol and the dopamine and all of that stuff floods in your bloodstream, and you're like, but I'm real namaste. It's still there.
Yeah, I think it's just like it's addicting, right? And so it's like you become addicted to the feeling, that like uplifting thing of seeing someone else succeed or grow or like lift themselves up. What a cool
thing to be addicted to.
Yeah, exactly. It's like way better than most of the other addictions.
Yeah, well, that's for another podcast, maybe.
Maybe another time.
I seriously have no vices except for lip balm, which is weird. But hey.
That is good. I won't speak to my vices, not in this setting.
Oh my gosh. We usually, so everybody who hasn't met Q or I, as you can tell now, we're 50 minutes into this almost. And we could go for the rest of the day. Yeah. Shall we wrap with one last parting thought? So we've talked a lot about authenticity. We've talked about data. We've talked about kindness. We've talked about creativity. Tell me right here, right now with you, it's the earliest part of 2020. I mean, Harry and Meghan are in Canada. Trump's being impeached. There's a whole lot of stuff happening in the world. Give me your prediction for this time next year about where you think you will be. Doesn't have to be physically, but maybe, mentally, whatever.
With any luck, I'll be back behind this desk for episode 54.
I love him.
Yes. I've got some themes on things that I'm trying to embed within the people I surround myself with, my organization, my team, my clients, and everything else. And then personally, I've taken to the LinkedIn influencing game slightly.
Ooh, LinkedIn.
Ramping up my content.
Inspired.
Hashtag. And probably inspired by you in many ways as well. But I'm really focusing on defining that craft of helping people grow, right?
Nice.
And that's really driving a lot of growth myself.
Nice.
And so just a conscious effort and focus on the different perspectives and strategies and ways and elements of things that like I've been doing this unstructured learning thing, right? Ooh. Where it means I can't finish a book cover to cover. So I just like jump in and I'm like, I quite like that. That really resonates with where I'm at the moment. Yeah. That's inspiring. I'm going to like, take that, maybe share something about it, talk to people and like let that simmer. And then the next time maybe I'll pick up a different book and find a different page,
that's
like
awesome.
Into different things. And it's been really cool. But so that's me. I'm trying to grow myself through helping others grow in any way that I can and just really like nail that authenticity and kind of genuine element. And Hallelujah. And hopefully we'll be able to play out. Is it fair to flip the same question back to you?
Oh, God. I mean, you're pretty good at it. You're pretty good at bringing those questions right back around. I think, is it bad to say samesies?
No. I think samesies is pretty awesome.
Like we said earlier, leaving the corporate world for a little while. Absolutely stoked, excited. Can't wait to drop my kid off at high school.
Poor girl.
Sorry, baby. And this time next year, would just love to walk in again, have a conversation like this, and just be happy, knowing that the world has had some better stories put out, and there's potentially been a positive impact through the work that we do. Because damn it, we can make a positive impact little by little by little.
And it feels good.
Feels bloody good.
It feels bloody good, mate.
Bloody good, mate.
Did we never circle back to that whole gay mom thing?
Oh, the gay mom thing. That'll be podcast.
Stay tuned for the next episode
of Your Gay Mom, featuring me. Yeah. So thanks for joining us, Q. As always, thank you so very, very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. So excited to see where you take this.
Yeah. And that's us. Thanks, everybody. Now we're just going to chit-chat to each other.
As you